Hey YouTube, it's Ivy. Today I'm going to be walking through a speed paint of a recent piece and how I used Photoshop to paint over a photo, creating a digital painting portrait. I'll be breaking down my process into 15 steps. The tools used here are a Wacom Intuos Medium tablet and Adobe Photoshop CC 2020. Let's jump right in. To start, paste and position your photo reference. Combine if you need to. The quality doesn't need to be great here, that's why we're painting over it. Just make sure your lighting is clear and you can see any important details. You may want to color block in any additional parts you plan to draw in, like I gave a rough extra sketch to the arm that I would be drawing in. Use gradients, curves, and color overlays to mess with colors in interesting ways. Remember that these aren't the final colors and will be painted over, so think of this pass as more of an underpainting than the colors you really want to have finalized. In this starting instance, I used a darker color layer and a soft light layer to get the blue-purple color under I liked. Experimenting with unconventional colors can make the final palette a lot more interesting. Set up your desktop so you can look back on your original reference, so you can begin painting over and stylizing what you have. You can't see it here, but I have two monitors, so my second screen can always have my reference photo up. Begin repainting big blocks of color. It will make the painting look more natural and not like you've simply gone over a photo with a few Photoshop brush strokes. This will take some base painting skills and have an eye for color picking to execute well. Learning to use reference is always a good thing to practice. If an area isn't looking right, make sure to look back on your photo and see if your values are right. You can mess with the hue and saturation of colors in your paintings a lot, as long as your values are correct. In my case, my art is clearly anime styled, so I exaggerate these features to give myself bigger eyes and a smaller chin using Liquify tools. This is a little bit like face tuning, so don't feel the need to do this if you want to stay true to how you look. I just like stylizing, and feel it gives it a special touch. Think about caricature art. It still looks like the subject matter, and you can tell who it is, but features are exaggerated for effect. From here, a bold outline and some more color blocking moves things along. This leans into that comic feel I'm going for, and also can add some interesting texture as you go over it later, seeing small individual brushstrokes peeking out underneath. Here, I felt simplifying the shirt would be easier, and also just leave out distractions from what we're really focusing on, which is the face. A more dynamic pose can really add to the character of a piece. Here, I select my hand and use a combination of warp and transform tools to make it a bit more comical and, bendy. Don't get too attached to any part of your work at this point, because if you make some mistakes and things look a bit too comical, messy, or chopped up, just remember they're easy to paint over later. It's best to make fundamental changes as early on as possible. You can also see me messing with Liquify and kind of deciding I didn't like it or playing around with stuff. So make sure to experiment and see what you like. Start building color using a combination of textured and soft, plain brushes. This balance brings interest as you can see individual strokes and texture, but you want to avoid looking overcrowded by piling texture on texture on texture. Having particular focal points by using hard edges contrasted against blurry and soft edges keeps the eye focused on what you really want. If you're looking for juice in art, that's a key component. Continue rendering by bringing in more color accents that complement what's already there, but add some extra fun too. Using both cool and warm tones here really is what makes it interesting. If your underpainting is on the cooler side of colors like purple, greens, and blues, then adding pink, orange, yellow, and red in the right spots will really make it look beautiful. The same goes vice versa. Don't be afraid to use different colors, and don't stick to one. Experiment, and when it doesn't work, just paint over it. Adding a layer of texture before your final cleaning can add very interesting variation that you might not get with the uniform nature of Photoshop brushes. This is a similar phase to step 2, using gradients and overlays to add color, except this time it's not necessarily color we're changing, but texture. Lots of different layer styles can utilize this. Check out especially playing with lighten, darken, overlay, and soft light. But depending on the texture you bring in, lots of layer styles can look interesting. Remember, it's also a good idea to play with adjustments for the texture layer itself. For example, if something looks good as a lighten layer but it's just kind of overpowering, bringing the contrast up and the darkness down can keep the texture without making the effect too strong. Understanding how layer styles work will be a huge benefit to how you edit them, as most can be neutralized or strengthened with editing. So make sure that you're cleaning up your texture overlays. I ended up using a grunge texture and a street view of my current city. Here, I added another curves layer too to bring in some purple again because my skin is looking too light overall and I want to focus more on adding highlights. So I add in some highlights using color dodge first. I used a whole rainbow of colors here, but mostly focusing on oranges and yellows in the face. Some blue is in there too, but it mostly shows up as pink. After adding the pretty effect stuff, start going in with the cleanup process. Some details can get lost as you add textures and lighting effects and add to the overall feeling of over-photoshopping general areas. Using these effects mid-process keeps it from looking overly computer-generated as an end result. Then you just want to add your final details. I add my glasses back in because it's too hard and annoying to paint around them generally. I start thinking about what extra effects might say something about me and my aesthetic. I like comical things, my fake mustaches, and enjoying things that are a little bit like creepy cute. The other side of my art, when I'm not doing painterly things, is very cutesy and anime style simple, so I like to mix that in when I can. Looking at how other people draw over their Instagram pictures can be good inspiration. It's popular to add in lines on top of flowers, animals, logos, particular shapes, or aesthetic markers. So find what suits you and add that in. Your final steps will be general cleanup, like liquifying anything that looks funky in the end, adding a high pass or sharpen layer or final curves, and then you're pretty much good to go. And we're done! Thank you for watching and following along. If you like my work, drop a follow for me here and on my socials. I do live streams, videos, and art posts as often as I can. And if you'd rather skip the mess, you can also commission me for portraits, and you can find info for that on my website. Thanks guys, until next time.